Okay, hey friends. I'm just coming on to give a little explanation of my experiences with ET contact. I've talked about this on a few podcasts that I've been guests on, and it hasn't been sort of my main shtick on this channel or anywhere else, but I have been feeling like it is something of interest to people. More often, and I'm feeling like it's a time when I want to make myself available as a resource and for people to connect with on the subject if they'd like. So I made another video sort of explaining that I'm going to be offering sessions for people who are interested in making contact, people who want to share about their contact, or people who want to hear about my contact or any topic around ET experiences. So I just wanted to offer my story. I was really fascinated by and felt very connected to the idea of extraterrestrials since I was little. I was born in 1980, so ET was huge when I was little, and I felt so deeply connected to that experience and very adamant that that was real. Um, I also felt connected to like spirits and all sorts of knowing non-physical stuff, paranormal stuff when I was little, was very mystical as a child, and was adamant that I was time traveling. I now believe that I was time traveling, but I was told that I just had a really vivid imagination. Then the movie Contact came out, and that was hugely influential in my life. I just felt like such a longing when I watched that. I felt so deeply connected to the that desire to make contact. Just this really longing that I felt. And I also, as a child, always was like, I think I'm adopted. Like, I think I'm not from here. I felt very other for as long as I can remember. And I really was convinced that I was from somewhere else and felt really other always. And that was very painful for a lot of my younger years. And yeah, I just really, I would always say, like, I believed in everything. I believed in fairies. I believed in dragons. I believed in extraterrestrials. I believed in time travel. And people would just say, like, oh, you're a little too old for this. Like, you should grow out of it. I was still talking about that stuff, like, in sixth grade, and it was really unpopular. Um, so I kind of buried it down and kept it to myself. And then when I was in college, my first year of college, I took astronomy, just completely random. Like I needed a science credit, and that was one that fit in with my schedule. And the first day of the class, I they put a bunch of like videos up on on the, big screen. And I saw a nebula for the first time. And I was just like, I, I can't describe it any other way other than like, I was like, oh, that's me. Like, that's, I don't know if I would have said, like, maybe like, that's where I'm from. Like, that's my home. Like, it was like instantaneous. And still, if I look at a nebula, I'm like, oh, that's me. Like, I don't know what it is, but it's like an instant home, familiarity, connection, knowing, like, makes sense, feel like I am in the place where I'm meant to be, like, just a super connected to that image. And I know I had never seen an image of a nebula before that class. So it was very bizarre. And I found the class just like almost like painfully interesting, like longing, again, such a longing and such a belonging. And I was in a culture that was like really discouraging of me in terms of like women shouldn't go into the sciences or math. And so I felt like I couldn't really connect with it, but I like to pursue it past that class, but at the same time, I felt like desperation around it. Um, and it was very remarkable to me. stood out so significantly. And then fast forward, I just sort of like stayed unconnected to it. Fast forward to that was my first year of college. My final year of college when I was um, grappling with my gender and sexuality and was really feeling like there was no possibility that I could live authentically, and I became very suicidal. Um, and then the following year, I ended up overdosing. And during that overdose, I was unconscious for like 11 or 12 hours before I was found and taken to the hospital. But I had, in my experience, I had died. Like I had a near-death experience. I was close enough to the veil or whatever. They tried to pump my stomach. They basically said like I was too far gone, but I ended up regaining consciousness in the hospital. Um, so my near-death experience with that overdose was an experience of I was the nebula again. I was like I was the nebula. I was the universe. I was in blackness. I was like in the nebula. I don't know totally how to describe it. There's never been any words that are adequate, but it was like a complete um knowing again, and it was a complete like the longing that I felt when I looked at the universe pictures was not there. There was no longing, there was no need for anything. There was like total what I would imagine peace would feel like. It was like there's no need, basically. Like it was an absence of any need. It was just like totally you couldn't possibly have anything wrong. Um, and it was so expansive and so giant and so at the same time like womb like I felt very held and very like there could like if someone had said like are there any problems, I'd be like what's a problem, like there you couldn't even like contextualize the idea of a problem because it was so absent of any need, and so completely safe in a way that it was like if you said like is there any danger, you would say like what is danger, like that doesn't even make sense, because there could be no threat and no need, and like it was just fantastic. And then I did not have the experience that some people have where it's like, do you want to go back? No, I just was like ripped back into like the blaring fluorescent lights of the hospital and the beeping and like people yelling. And so I did not feel like I made the choice to come back. And I definitely spent the next 2 years like so depressed that I had had to leave that place of that like perfect blackness. Um, and so I felt very connected to like this outside of our reality through that experience. And then fast forward another um, 10 years. And when I was in labor with my kiddo, I also was in and out of consciousness, and I was having a really hard time in the labor process. And I again felt connected to like not connected. I felt I was the universe. I felt like gigantic and ever expanding, and like I was a nebula, and like I was the universe, like huge, big blackness, purples and turquoises and um fuchsia nebula. Look up a nebula, they're gorgeous. So again, for many hours as I was in and out of consciousness, I had this like very euphoric experience of connecting with that, and I felt very connected to my kid. It felt like he was like in this like portal world, and that I got to be there with him um, as he was coming through into this reality. So that was another like very strong connection to this nebula experience. And then, um, ugh. Whew, my vagus nerve is having a lot to say. Um, then fast forward another couple of years. So like 5 years ago, I want to say. Um, and I was really doing a lot of spiritual work. I had gotten divorced and I had gotten to a rock bottom, another point of being very suicidal. And I was doing a lot of spiritual work. I was doing a lot of like psychological work. I was in something called dialectical behavioral therapy, which was hugely impactful for me and has a lot of Zen Buddhism in it. So I was getting into spirituality as well, learning about Judaism because I ended up converting to Judaism. A therapist told me, like, you really need to connect with the spirituality piece of you. And I had left Christianity. So I was like, I cannot do that. And she was like, well, anything, it doesn't really matter. And I said I was interested in Judaism. And so I was learning a lot about mystical traditions through Judaism, which were very exciting and interesting to me. So I was just opening up to mystical stuff more. And I can't remember what it was, but somehow I started connecting with the concept of extraterrestrials and channeling, probably like some star seed stuff. And oh, the other movie that had been hugely impactful to me as a kid was the Star Trek movie where Spock is friends with the or goes swimming with and communicates with the humpback whale. And in that movie, I was like, oh, I can do that. Like I can communicate with humpback whales who are extraterrestrials. Like I thought that in my head. I didn't say that to anyone, but I definitely was like, oh, I can communicate with extraterrestrials who are humpback whales. Um, and I just knew it. Like I knew that was a real thing and that I could do it. And so yeah, I think I started coming across probably because I was watching spiritual things on YouTube. I was watching a ton of YouTube at that phase of my life, and I came across some like star CD type, like um there's a whole branch of extraterrestrial stuff that's like, oh yeah, the whales and the dolphins are extraterrestrials, and like this idea of like having, I forget, there was this one gal and she used to talk about like having babies for extraterrestrials. There was people doing that, and I felt like, oh, I think maybe I've done that. And I was just coming across these videos and feeling connected to them. So I sort of went down that rabbit hole and I came across Stephen Greer, who is someone who, people have all sorts of feelings about him, and I'm not here to say yay or nay. But he has a whole documentary that he put together called CE5 Contact or Contact something. I'll put the link in the description. And he sells an app that has specific frequencies on it that you can play while you're meditating according to the protocol. Like you sit outside, look at the sky, turn on these frequencies, and it's supposed to like help you connect with extraterrestrials to make contact, and it's supposed to communicate to them that you're available, and it's supposed to like prime you to be able to see things. People get together. I tried to find people locally that I could get together with, and that never came to fruition, but I did it a couple of times. And I started as I was going to bed, um, saying like, I'm open to ET contact. I'd like to have ET contact. And you can come, whatever, you can make connection with me. So I opened the door through meditation and through the CE5 app. And I did that for a couple of months. And then one night, an ET showed up in my room, and I was so excited. Like I had way more excited energy than they were up for. I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm so excited. Like I want to talk to you. I want to ask you everything. Can I come to your spaceship?" I was just like totally like fanning all over them. I was just like so excited. And they were like, "Yep, nope, bye." And the way they showed up was very sweet. Like it was very much they showed up in the form that I would most feel comfortable with and most recognize. So they were like a little, like they kind of a little bit bigger head, very tiny body, like a little grayish green, like little sucker fingers, kind of like frog fingers. Very sweet, big eyes, maybe 3 feet tall, just very charming, endearing, not non-threatening in any way. And they were just standing in my room. And then I was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And then they were like, not right now. And they left. Um, but I felt like it was a very warm and beautiful interaction. So that got me very excited. Was like, I want to see him again. I want to know all this stuff. I want to know so much more. And I looked up everything I could find. There's very little information that I could find. Eventually, I found a group of people who met to talk about their ET experiences or their desire to have ET experiences. And I didn't super connect with that group. They were very much more like conspiracy theory, scared about abductions and things. And my experience had been so positive. So I didn't super resonate with that. And then through them, I got connected to a woman who does hypnosis specifically for ET experiencers in Canada. And I'll see if I can find her website or information. If I can, I'll put it in the description. But it's been so many years, I'm not sure I'll be able to find it. But so I met with her and did a hypnosis, and she asked a bunch of questions. And the ET was very present, but not in the form that I had seen them when they visited. So that was very surprising. I very quickly was like, oh, I am this ET who came into my room. I am their partner. And we are on another planet in a parallel reality right now. And it's a water planet. And it was very cute because the visual that I got, which I don't know if this is like an accurate visual, or if it's just, again, I feel like they use the visuals that will make sense to us or be comforting to us. Um, and so I was in like a little den like situation, sort of like in Winnie the Pooh when they have like those little den houses that are underground. And there was like big comfy chairs, and I was sitting across from this ET who's my partner in that on that planet. And we're like so cozy and having the sweetest, like coziest time together. And um they had more of an octopus looking body, like a tentacles, but not quite an octopus. And the hypnosis person was like, okay, look down at your body. And I also had that body. And then there was like these channels that were sort of like tunnels through the water, like the whole planet was underwater, and we could like zoom between places through those. And it was very clear that there was like versions of whales and dolphins and other sea creatures on that planet with us. And and I was like, what am I like, what did you come to contact me for? And they were like, oh, just to say hi. And I was like, what am I like here to do? What's my job? I was very still like wired with the idea of like here to do a job, like purpose, mission. Um, and I didn't understand at that point that that's like not so important to them in the same way. And they just kept saying like relax. And I was like, well, I want to know, like, what am I supposed to know? And they said like um it'll have something to do with waves. And it's interesting now because now the work that I've primarily been doing is through sound, and sound is waves. So that was interesting. And then they told me their name was the hypnotist asked their name, and they said like it's an algorithm, like it doesn't have a sound, which I thought was so cool. And then I asked what my name was, and they said it's the sound that a wave makes, which was again really interesting, like a crashing ocean wave. I really like that because I've always felt extremely connected to the ocean, and so that was really fun. And yeah, they just said just here to support you, and all you need to do is relax. And I was very like, I want a job, you know. So I finished up that hypnosis, and then I was very excited and like talked about it and studying about it and looking up everything I could. And I got this tattoo that's of to octopus mating. Because I felt like so connected and so excited, and it was like such a big part of my life. I was talking about it to everyone, and then it was almost like I was like too intense about it, and they were like, because I didn't see or hear from them for like 6 months, like a long time, or maybe even a year. It was a long time. It felt very painful. I was like, oh, I scared you away. So I tried to like back off and just be more chill about it all. Um, and then one day, they just came back and I could feel them like I think I was on a walk or something. And they just like put one of their like tentacles like around my neck and then another one like around my waist and just said like, listen, I'm just here to support you. Like I'll be here for a while in a way that you can physically feel me whenever you want, but like you don't have to feel me all of the time. And I was just so happy, and it felt like the most bestest, like supportive, like loved, like partnership that I didn't really know. I had never had that feeling before. And so they were just with me for like 6 months, every day, all day, just like I could feel their arm around me. And it just felt so great and so nice and just like a real partnership, like really loving, connected. I just loved it so much. And I wasn't at that point like hung up on like, what am I supposed to do or what am I supposed to know? I just enjoyed their company. And it really felt like they were there just really to encourage me and it was so lovely. And so that lasted for like 6 months, and then I felt like I wasn't so like desperate or needy for them anymore, and I was just like happy. Like even now, I can call up the thought of them, and I can feel their warmth, and they're like, "Yep, I love you. I'm here." Without any desperation or neediness, which I felt initially. I felt like they gave me that 6 months as a way to sort of get over that desperation and neediness. Um, and so I kind of backed off on trying to learn about and know everything. I mean, I had come across Dolores Cannon's Three Waves of Ascension, which super resonated to me. It's a concept, and I'll put a link to it of like um, beings who have come to Earth to be a part of this ascension process and that they can feel very like suicidal and like I don't belong here. And I was super resonated with that and that felt very validating. And I like Dolores Cannon's stuff, a lot of it. And it just sort of came to like an easier place with it all. Like I just feel like, oh yeah, just like there's people doing their thing on other parts of the world, like there's extraterrestrials doing their thing and they're involved and it's a storyline and it's not like it might be threatening to this lifetime, like ideas about like reptilian agendas or whatever, like sure, like that could be dangerous in the same way that like it's dangerous if you get cancer or something to this timeline, but there's nothing that's dangerous on a universal consciousness level. And so I just feel really like at peace and not worried about it. I feel like if I want to get interested and think about it or learn about it, I can, but it doesn't have that like scariness or like weightiness that it used to have, which is really nice. Um, and then when I was doing the podcast, I met a guy who was doing QHHT, which is the hypnosis that Dolores Cannon trains people in. And he was doing a new form of it, which was a little bit more galactic informed. And or quantum, I don't know, some different, slightly different version of it. And he offered to do a free session for me. And I was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. So we did that. And that was maybe last year. And I had like no stress or like pressure or like hopes or like desperation at that point. So that was really nice. Um, sort of like mindset to do that in. And it was fascinating. I mean, in that one, we got into many more details about how, like, I am, well, in the first hypnosis, I forgot to say that I went and saw myself, like, go to the the council, the general council, with like all the different representatives of all the different species where they go intergalactic council or whatever, um where they asked me would I go to Earth for this specific thing, and I was like, yeah. So I had already been to the council with that first hypnosis. So when I went into the second hypnosis, I saw more of the council, and I saw that I had volunteered as a representative of my species from that water planet to work with um, representatives from parasitic planet or species, together with this who they called like I forget, it was like the computer programmer or the designer or something like that. And that person or being was sort of like a United Nations type ambassador, who was not affiliated with any species so that they could be sort of like a neutral party to help my species and this parasite species do this joint project on Earth, modifying the DNA from what it is with the double helix into a uh like circular DNA, which is actually when I looked it up later, it's like the corona virus, the like a corona, the crown is a circular, and that it's um experimenting to see if we could reduce the like parasite component of the current DNA, which requires a host, and like this would not require a host. So it's interesting because now when I've thought about it, it's kind of like moving away from victim consciousness in and external authority, which is kind of like parasitic model, to the more individualistic, which is lines up nicely with the human design um, transition from the cross of planning to the cross of sleeping phoenix. So it was interesting because afterwards, you don't really know what's going on when you're in those hypnosis, but when you listen to it back and like do some research, it all lined up with like COVID and the human design 2027 stuff. So that was kind of fun. But again, it doesn't feel like scary or really weighty or super important to me because at this point in my experience of this whole thing, I'm just like, yeah, this is just one timeline. It has nothing super to do with universal consciousness. Like, it's just like, it's a fun timeline and it's all sorts of things are happening. There's dangerous things that are happening, there's fun things that are happening, and all of them are not like inconsequential, but they're like, sort of like if I was like at Disneyland and I was like, okay, the Dumbo ride is like really serious important, and the teacup ride is like less important or something. It's like, well, they're all just rides. Like you could ride them or you don't have to ride them, and like neither of like it doesn't make a difference. Um, if the teacup ride is like blown up, like it's still Disneyland. And so, and if like the teacup ride is amazing, like it's still Disneyland. So I feel like our universal consciousness thing is the Disneyland, and the rides are like the timelines. Like, sure, you want to go on the teacups 12 times and not go on anything else? Great, go ahead. You want to blow up the teacup ride? Go ahead. Like, that's fine. It's not, doesn't, it doesn't really matter. So I feel like it's like fun. Like, okay, yeah, sure, I'm doing a genetic mutation experiment with a parasite species and a water species, and that's what I'm doing here. Sure, that sounds fun to think about. And they like, there was a whole thing about the water species, like the whales and the dolphins, and how they're here to support me if I need it. And there was a whole thing about, like wearing a hat always, which I had been feeling like I needed to wear a hat always. And I since, if you notice, have, because it just feels better to me. Who knows? Who knows? But it was like I was already doing that, and it just felt like fun validation, and I just got to like hang out a little bit more with my partner, who I do feel very connected to, and it feels like I feel a lot less alone. Um, and I just feel like it's kind of like a like we got this thing, which is really nice. And so yeah, that was my most recent experience. And I don't feel like I feel zero fear about extraterrestrial stuff. I feel zero fear really about like anything, not zero. Zero is a strong word, but like if you told me like tomorrow will be World War III and you're gonna run out of food and starve and then you're gonna die, like be like, okay. Um, yeah, I just feel like a lot less intensity around all of that stuff because that, like I said, that Disneyland analogy sort of um my connection with the extraterrestrials reinforced my feeling that like everything's okay, nothing's really that important. So yeah, that is brings you up to date with my ET thing. The only thing I didn't mention was that there is a book series by Octavia Butler called the Xenogenesis Trilogy. And when I read that after I had had my first hypnosis, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm the species that I'm a part of is basically Uloi. So if you've read that series, the Uloi are like they're sexless. So they're like non-binary a little bit, no gender beings who partner with sets of partners. So they have like a male and female and a male and female and an Uloi, and they're all a family unit, the five of them. And when I read that book, I was like, okay, yeah, my partner and I are Uloi, in that other planet. And the way she describes them is exactly how I see them. And the planet and the experience, like the whole thing of the Xenogenesis trilogy is like very on point to a lot of the stuff that I experience interacting with the ETs from this planet. And so I feel that her description was not science fiction, but that it was based on her experience of these. Or maybe it came to her through her imagination, but I very much feel that my species has something to do with Uloi or our Uloi or something like that, or her description of the Uloi are based off of a version of the my extraterrestrial. So if you're curious, that's an excellent description. And I really like those books in general, even if you just want to read them for fun. I love anything Octavia Butler. So there is that. Uh, what else? I don't do the like meditations or the CE5 thing anymore. If I felt like I would. Um, I feel like very confident that I'm in many multiple timelines. I now am comfortable time traveling. I often go back in time to my younger self and I spend time with my older selves, and that has given me a lot of comfort and I feel like stability and groundedness. So I guess all that to say that like for me, the connection with these things has been very grounding. And I understand that people can be very nervous about losing connection with their groundedness. And maybe my nervous system work helps me with that. Um, but I love talking about it and I would love to talk about it more. So, like I said at the beginning, I am now going to be offering sessions, for connecting and chatting about any of these things in whatever way would be supportive to you. So reach out. I will put my, website information and all of that good stuff in the description. And I love you very much. Okay, talk to you later.